Hey everyone, DisturbedShadow here to start my next discography. I know I just finished the Tool discography last night, but I do really want to jump into this next one right away because one of this band's releases is turning 10 very soon, and as you know, I like to do a series where I review albums on their 10th anniversary each year. So I want to actually and I've been meaning to do this band's discography for a while now, so now's the perfect time to do it. So today we're going to be talking about one of my personal favorite bands of all time. They're pretty close to being my number one, just under Disturbed, and that is Trivium, who are just a really awesome band. I've seen them live 3 times, and they're just awesome. I really love them, and I've been meaning to get to the discography for a while, and now is the perfect time. So today we'll be reviewing their debut album entitled Ember To Inferno, which came out back in 2003. And I do want to say before I get started that I do think this is their weakest album, but I'm going to be reviewing all of them, so it's going to be interesting to see how they progress from here. It's still a good album, but it's not their best. So let's jump in and talk about the things I do like and the things I don't like about this album. So let's start off with the tracks that I think are the ones that stood out the most. So first off, we'll talk about track number 2, Pillars of Serpents, which is one of my personal favorite songs on the album. It's got this really heavy, crushing riff throughout the whole song. There's a bunch of cool riffs throughout the whole song. And it's just a really heavy, powerful song. And then there's some cool melodic bits towards the end. So it's just a great way to start off this album, because the first song is like a little instrumental thing. But this is the main first song. Track number 3, If I Could Collapse the Masses, which is probably my personal favorite song on this album. Although there's a couple other ones that I really love on this album. This is just a really good song. It's just got this really good progression to it and cool chorus and stuff like that. It's pretty catchy. It's one of the more catchier songs on the album. So it's one of the ones that really stood out to me. So it's just a good song all around, and it's definitely worth checking out. Track number 4, Fugue, and then in parentheses, A Revelation, which is another one of my personal favorite songs on the album. It's got this just really heavy but really upbeat kind of riff at the beginning. It just makes you want to headbang. It's a really simple riff, but it's just really catchy and upbeat sounding. It really gets you into the song. Plus, there's just a lot of cool alternations that Matt's doing on the vocals between the screams and the melodic singing type of thing. So it's cool how he just switches back and forth between them. And it's just got this really powerful chorus that always pulls me in. It's just this really catchy chorus that always gets stuck in my head. So it's just a really good song. Track number 5, Requiem, which is another one like Fugue that just pulls you in with a really catchy riff at the beginning, and then it's got some great melodic singing choruses that really pull you into the song. So it's just another great song all around, and another one of my personal favorites on the album. And finally, rounding up the first half of this album is the title track, Ember To Inferno, which is another personal favorite of mine on this album. It's just got this really great, heavy, fast-paced, thrashy type of verse, and then it pulls back to a more simplistic and more melodic chorus that is really catchy. Again, like a lot of the other songs I've been mentioning, that really gets stuck in your head. It's just a really good song. And just the way the chorus is just, it always gets stuck in my head. And then towards the end of the song, there's a lot of cool, like, shreddy guitar playing as the chorus fades out, which is an interesting way to end the song. So that's the first half of the album, which I think is the much stronger half of this album, where all the really good songs are just stacked up one right after the other. And then one of the issues I have with this album sort of starts to fizzle out towards the end. The songs aren't necessarily bad, but they're just not as good as the first half of the album. So we'll start off with Ashes, the instrumental, which is kind of a boring song in my opinion. There's just not a lot going on in this instrumental, and then the production on the guitar in it just sounds a little bit weird to me. It's okay, but it's just not really doing much for me. Track number 8, To Burn the Eye, which is a decent song, but it's just not as good as some of the stuff on the first half of the album. It's got this really cool, like, opening riff and those other cool riffs in this album. I mean, on the song, but, I mean, it just feels a little bit disjointed in places where they're not quite sure what they're doing with it. Like, there's some parts that sound like a melodic death metal song, and another part that has this, like, chuggy start-stop kind of thing, like a metalcore song. It's like they're not really sure what they're doing with the song. But so it just feels a little disjointed, but it's still an alright song. It's still worth listening to. Track number 9, Falling to Grey, is another one like To Burn the Eye, where it's alright, but there's just not a lot of interesting stuff. It's not a very memorable song, but it's not bad either. It's just not really catching my interest as much as some of the other songs. It doesn't have those catchy hooks like Fugue or Requiem that pull you into the song. It's just kind of there. Track number 10, My Hatred, is another one that really doesn't stand out much to me at all. It's just alright. The one thing I do like about this song is that there's some really cool drumming parts from Travis on this song that aren't really present on the other songs. So that's what caught my interest on that song, but not so much anything else in that song. Track number 11, When All Light Dies, is they sort of get back some of that momentum. It's a pretty good song, but there's a little part at the end that sort of gets weird, heavy, chuggy type of thing, and it feels a little out of place with the first half of the song, but it's alright. But this song ends with a really cool melodic bit that fades into the ending instrumental, A View to Burning Empires, which has this really cool sound to it, that riff, plus how it flows into that View to Burning Empires, track number 12, which is one of the better instrumentals on the track. It's interesting. And now getting back to the first track, Inception, The Bleeding Skies, is actually a section of A View to Burning Empires played in reverse. So it's cool how they start off with that. And then you see how it is played back or played forwards at the end. One thing I do want to talk about really quick is the reissue of this album. It was released the next year in 2004, because there's a couple songs I really want to talk about, which are Blinding Tears Will Break the Skies and The Deceived, which both, of course, got re-recorded in the Ascendancy sessions. But I just want to talk about these early versions of the song because they're really interesting sounding. There's a few things that are different, like both of these songs have this thing where they have like a couple verse elements and a couple chorus elements that they repeat this, like the same lyrics and stuff, but they're a little bit different the way they order them on these songs, so that's interesting to hear. But it's cool to see how these songs sort of bridge the gap between this album and their next album, where it still has that sort of rough production sound of Ember To Inferno, but more the melodic style playing that is present on Ascendancy, and that's because Corey joined the band for these songs. Like, he joined right after this album's release, and then he recorded these couple of songs with them. And it's interesting to see how his guitar playing influenced those slight change in direction that they had. So those are cool to listen to. And then finally, since I'm talking about all the songs, I might as well talk about track number 15 on the reissue, Demon, which is taken from the 2003 demo. It's an interesting song. It's very different from what you'd expect from Trivium. It's got a more thrash metal, like death metal type of vibe, kind of like a Sepultura almost type of vibe. It's an alright song, but it's really different from what you'd expect from Trivium, so it's probably why they didn't put it on the actual album, because it's not really the direction they were trying to go on this album. So those are all the songs. Let's talk about the individual band members themselves. So we'll start off with Matt Heafy on vocals. He's doing an alright job, but it's not his best vocal performance. But given the fact that he was only 17 when they recorded this album, he's doing an awesome job for maybe not having as much experience as an older musician would have had. But on the vocal end of things, he's got a really great, like, harsh vocal a sound that is just really aggressive and growly type of sound. And it's really different from anything I've heard from anyone else. But I do want to say his clean vocals on this album are not as good as they are on future releases. There's just something, like, they don't seem to have enough emotion to them, or they seem a bit monotone to me in some places, which is alright, but I would have liked to see a little bit more emotion in them. But they're not bad either. So he's doing an alright job on there. And then he did all the guitar work on this album, both the lead and the rhythm guitar. There's a lot of catchy kind of riffs and more simplistic pullback riffs and all this kind of stuff. They're not as technical as they get in the future, but that's because, like I said, he's only 17 here and maybe doesn't have the experience that he had in the future, but he's doing an alright job. And there are a lot of great riffs, like on Fugue or Requiem or Pillars of Serpents, that really catch my interest and pull me into the songs. So he's doing an alright job there. Brent Young on bass, which is his only appearance on a Trivium album. He's doing an alright job. There's not a lot of bass moments that really stuck out to me, but what I did like is that the bass was turned up nice and loud in the mix, so I could always hear what was happening. And there's a few interesting bits where it sort of slows down and gets more chuggy, like on Fugue or on To Burn the Eye, where the bass sort of stands out a bit more. And then finally, Travis Smith on drums. this guy is a really awesome drummer, but this was their first album. It doesn't seem to have the same awesome drumming moments that were on the future releases that he performed on, but he's doing a good job. But there were a couple moments like on My Hatred where the drums really stood out to me, and he's doing all this cool technical kind of playing. So it's cool to see how he sort of, you can see the signs of how he's going to progress to become a better drummer as they go along. So he's doing a good job. No real complaints, but nothing really that stood out to me either. And I might as well say Corey on guitar for the 2 tracks he performed on Blinding Tears Will Break the Sky and The Deceived. He's doing a great job, and he and Matt Heafy work really well together. I'll just throw it out there since I mentioned those bonus tracks anyway. So that's it for the band members themselves. I'll just some final thoughts. One thing I noticed about this album is that they're sort of still trying to find the Trivium sound. It's their first album, so they're playing around with a bunch of different styles, their influences. Like you can really tell where there's some moments where they're trying to go with a more melodic death metal approach, or a more metalcore type of approach, or a thrash type of approach, which are their 3 main influences. But they haven't really found the definitive combination of them that is Trivium. So, like I said, on songs like Falling to Grey, there's a few moments where it feels like a more melodic death metal type of riffing, and then all of a sudden there's these chuggy sort of breakdowny type of riffs. It's like very disjointed, the transition from them, but they're not really fitting together right. But like I said, it's their first album, and they're still trying to find their sound, and they're playing around with these different influences. So that's one of my minor complaints about this album. And then one other thing, the production is very raw on this album. I don't mind that because I like both the raw sound of albums and the more like production heavy ones, but it's got a pretty good sound to it considering how low the production quality is. So that's an interesting little tidbit because the production quality on their future albums is just so good. It's very interesting to see the difference on this album. So just to wrap up, this album is probably not the best place to start if you're a new Trivium fan, because it's not their best work and it's not the most representative of what their sound is. But if you're a longtime fan and you've checked out all the other stuff and you haven't gotten to this one yet, it's definitely worth checking out. But like I said, it's definitely not their best album. It's definitely, in my opinion, their weakest album, but the only place they can go from here is up, and they certainly do that on future albums. So going here, I'm looking forward to seeing how they transition to the next album. Even though I've listened to all their albums so many times, it's just going to be interesting to go through all the albums one by one and see how they progress. So I'm looking forward to reviewing Ascendancy tomorrow on its 10th anniversary, so I will see you guys then. And as always, I'm DisturbedShadow, and be sure to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe if you want to see more of my reviews, or if you want to check out some of my older stuff. So until then, I will see you guys later.